Boarding. Welcome once again to the District 11 Spring Conference. We are so happy you are here. We cannot believe our luck to be able to actually have a conference this year and to have the quality of speakers that we have for the entire week. We are thrilled, we are excited, and I am just giddy with the fact that we get to kick this off with Lewis Chaney. I think this is an absolute perfect person to kick off this conference, and I am so excited for it. So, Lewis, you want to unmute and test to make sure that we can hear you all right?
Yes, I was just mouthing there to see if it worked. Yes, you can hear me at home.
That was mean and funny at the same time. I completely am on board with that response. Have you ever looked in a mirror and not like what you see? Some mirrors make you look small. Some make you look big. Some distort you. But how you see yourself in the mirror isn't always how you are seen by others. Toastmasters are no different. Lewis Chaney hopes the mirror he's about to hold up does its job and simply gets you to reflect. Please help me welcome our first presenter of the 2021 District 11 Spring Conference Week, your friend and mine, Lewis D. Chaney.
We all know what the dog days of summer are, but what are possum nights, Lewis? This is 6 years ago in April. Very first time I'd ever set foot in the doors of a Toastmasters meeting. Luann Clark was a Toastmaster, and that's the question she threw me. Needless to say, I got up, didn't know what a table topic was, but knew I had to do something with this. So I went on to tell her, well, here's what it is. Here in the country, me and some of my buddies get together on a Saturday, and we go down here at the bottoms, and we take our trucks, and we get our coolers, fill them up with beer, and we sit down there, and we tell jokes, we laugh, we cut up, and we get drunk. Then we walk down the road a piece, and right there's a 4-lane. You got 2 lanes going north on the Twin Bridge there. You got 2 lanes coming south. You got a median in the middle. And what we try to do is we try to dodge traffic and keep from getting killed playing human Frogger. That is possum nights. With this, I had found my calling. I found a place I belonged. I found a place that I loved, a home in Toastmasters. Within a few months' time of being in the club, they let me host the Golden Night Mic here in Henderson. A lot of dignitaries from Toastmasters were there. I'm sure I could have done a lot better job, but they felt confident enough in me to let me do it, and I was grateful for that. In my first year, I also got to go to the international contest, made it to 3rd place in the district level, was very pleased with that. Since then, I have managed to do a TED Talk, and I've created my own company called Get to the Damn Point, which combines my speaking world along with all the background in television that I've got. To say that I love Toastmasters is not enough. To say that I love my club is not enough. But what I love more than all of that are the friends I've made. I go back to Luann. She has become my mentor, my muse, and my friend. I love getting together with these people. I love the camaraderie we have. I love the lives we share because you know how it is. Like Stephen King said, everything gets in eventually in a speech. So I get to know these folks through their speeches, and I've gotten to know people very, very well. I absolutely love what we do. And at our club, we use a good, better, best system when it comes to evaluations. First thing we do, tell somebody what they did good. Then we tell them what they could have done better. Then we tell them what they could have done best. Pretty much that's what I'm going to be doing here tonight with you all. And that was the good. Now let's talk about what I've seen at the club level and on up that we could do better. Back when I was a kid going to church, we had this woman who played the piano. Her name was Agnes. And Agnes played the piano, if you want to call it that. She could have been Tone Loke's sister, tone deaf. The woman just could not play the piano very well. In the Bible where it says Jesus wept, if he had come back and heard her play, it would have been in there twice. But Agnes played her heart out, and the choir, they completely tried to keep up with her and just let her go because she was enthusiastic, she was passionate, and she loved playing. But at the end of everything, it is a good old country church, and these folks would be like, well, now, Agnes, she don't play all that good. But bless her heart, she tries. See, bless your heart. Bless their heart. That's what we say in Kentucky. When you want to say something that's kind of insulting or might sting a little bit, to draw the sting out of it, you say, well, bless your heart. So while I'm holding this mirror up and I'm talking about some of the criticisms I'll have here and critique I'll have, if it kind of stings a little bit, well, bless your heart. The thing about with bless your heart, you can get away with anything. You can say anything. You can have somebody say, you know what, that girl over there, she's about as ugly as hammered shit, but bless her heart, she's got a good soul. And it'll get away with it. Tony Campanello said one time, he's a pastor. He said, I want to say 3 things to you tonight. First, while you were sleeping, 30,000 kids died of starvation or disease due to malnutrition. Second, most of you don't give a shit. Third, you're more upset with the fact that I just said shit than the fact that 30,000 kids died last night. And he's got a point. The reason I use salty language, I don't use it for shock value. It's how I talk. It's who I am. As a matter of fact, every language has cuss words in it. Even in the animal world, believe it or not, cuss words are used. I just found this out the other day myself doing research talking about this for the speech. Monkeys will use their excrement as a social tool to let you know if they disapprove of things. Well, in captivity, they've trained some of these monkeys to use sign language, and they teach them the sign language for poo. On their own, without any help at all, the monkeys adapt the word poo the same way we do and use it for other things. I found that incredibly fascinating, that even in the animal kingdom, that it does it. Also, swear words have been known, scientifically proven, to show that it will help you with pain. You can tolerate pain more by saying swear words than you could if you didn't. There's a show on Netflix, or there was, I don't know if it's still there, called The History of Swear Words. In it, they had comedians standing. And they would take their hand and submerge it in ice cold water. Half of them were allowed to cuss, the other half were not. Those who were allowed to cuss lasted 2, 3, and 4 times longer than the people who couldn't. In addition, people say, well, if you use salty language, you use colorful language, cuss words, swear words, whatever you want to call them. If you use it, that means you're not creative and you lack intelligence. Absolutely the opposite has been proven. People who are very creative and people who are very intelligent will use them. So let's dismiss all of that. It's a matter too of being comfortable. I know when I worked in television news, and I spent a lot of years, I worked with people from all sorts of levels of local government to state government to officials and heads of whatever. And here's the interesting thing. When those people got comfortable with me, the language on the phone changed. When they got to the point where they could trust me, things would come out that they typically wouldn't say, but they trusted me. I would send a reporter off to somebody and they'd come back and hand me a tape and go, yeah, so-and-so said, tell you to kiss his ass. What that meant was, hi, Lewis, how you doing? That meant they trusted me and were comfortable with me. So I learned that as they got to that level, that was a good level of comfort that they got to with me. Even when I was looking at my own course, my own stuff that I created, get to the damn point. Because I had been taught in Toastmasters by some people in Toastmasters who told me, yeah, you probably shouldn't use any of that kind of language in a speech in Toastmasters. And I'm always one to question why. When I developed my course and I developed the name of my company, I was still worried because of hearing that in the back of my head from Toastmasters. Should I even put the word damn in there? But let's just face facts, guys. Get to the dang point just quite doesn't sell it the way that get to the damn point does. Get to the dang point kind of makes me sound like Gomer Pyle should be standing next to me as I'm trying to sell the product. So I wanted something that really hit. I talked to a pastor friend of mine. I asked her, I said, when you stump your toe, do you use swear words? She laughed. She said, Lewis, I use swear words when I don't stump my toe. And I explained the word damn to her. I said, it's been around at least since 1939 publicly with Gone with the Wind, but I didn't want to take the chance on offending anybody. Will I offend anybody, do you think, if I use this word? And she laughed. She said, Lewis, I've used damn in sermons to make a point. So I felt pretty good about it. And the reason I bring all of this up is it's natural. If you watch speakers outside of the world of Toastmaster, and I'll name a couple of them for you. Brene Brown comes to mind, who's a great motivational speaker. Gary Vee, who's an influencer, Gary Vaynerchuk. Gary is really rough around the edges, but that's his personality and who he is. Brene will drop some language in from time to time. It's what is out there and natural and normal in the world. And to me, as a speaker in a club, to have that tool taken from me, because I'm afraid that if I say it, I'm going to get somebody going, oh, dang, you're going to scratch that right off Lewis's out. You know what I mean? It's something that you're robbing people of their authenticity with. And isn't that what we're all about, getting comfortable and being authentic? So if you've got somebody who uses a little bit, or if you want to use a little bit, you should be comfortable. My club is the place I should be the most comfortable to test out material and do things like this. So think about that when you have somebody who uses a little bit of blue language. How did I get like this in the first place? I became a little bit disenfranchised with the franchise. That's what happened to me. And it's why I'm bringing the material that I'm bringing in today. And here's how it happened. Scott was sending me stuff. Here's what's happening in District 11, Lewis. Hey, we got this going on in District 11, Lewis. Hey, this is what's happening. Then he started sending me things. Officer training is coming up. You want to go to officer training? You should really come to officer training. We'd love to have you at officer training. Officer training's next week. You coming? Till finally, it's just like I felt overwhelmed with it. I just went, take me off the list. I wrote him. I didn't know Scott from anybody at this point. I said, take me off your list. He's like, okay, but why? So I told him a little bit about some of the material I'm going to be covering. And he said, okay. He said, you sound interesting. Can we chat? I said, sure. So he called me on the phone. To tell you how good he is, in an hour, hour and a half, Scott had held the mirror up for me and let me see where my faults were. So I'm not the one just standing up here and pointing blame. I am one of the people who've done it myself. So I'm letting you know you're not alone. I've done some of these things too. But he pointed that out to me, and he restored me back into Toastmasters. And I'm thankful for Scott for doing that, for getting me off my disenfranchisement with the franchise. But about officer training, one of the key reasons why I didn't want to go to officer training, let me tell you, I'd already been. And I think if you're a veteran Toastmaster, go once and you shouldn't have to go again. If you're going to be there to teach it, sure. But to go and attend it, I don't know that that's necessary. Now, the other side of the coin is something Scott and I talked about that I hadn't thought about. Maybe I'm not going because it's because what Lewis can hear. Maybe I'm there because I can contribute to what's going on in the conversation. And that part of it didn't click with me until we talked about it. I was blindsided to just what I wanted to do and not thinking about the greater good, the same as I would in my club, but I wasn't thinking about it at a higher level when it came to that. But what really got me turned off on the officer trainings, I had gone to one, and the person who was hosting it put in this much effort. And that is exactly how much I got out of it. I am very big on don't waste my time, and I'm not going to waste yours. I want to engage you. I want to keep you going if you're giving me your time, because it's the greatest gift of all. And I felt like that for 45 minutes, I wasted my time. I got nothing out of this. We sat and we chatted a little bit. The group did. But the person who's holding the event, the person who's holding the session, brought nothing to the game. And that kind of turned me off on officer training. I've seen others take it. And here's the thing, guys. I'm going to say this, and you might not sit there and nod your head, but I'm willing to bet most of you are thinking it. Those PowerPoints that we are provided from the upper tiers of Toastmaster are just not good. They're boring. They're very, very verbose. And to stand up there and to try to do one of those is very, very difficult at best. To me, send me the PDF of this and I can read it, rather than go and spend 45 minutes for somebody else to read it to me. If you're going to do these things, my challenge to you is go beyond the PowerPoint. You've never met anybody more against PowerPoint than this guy right here. I go along with what Steve Jobs said. If you know what you're talking about, you don't need PowerPoint. Notice I'm not using one, and I won't use one throughout this. But don't just stand there and read the thing. Find a way to engage me. Find a way to draw me in. Find a way to make me feel something, anything, except standing there telling me this is what the office is about. Take me in a little deeper. Storytelling works. Draw me in. Make me care. That's the main thing. I had a friend. She worked in a school system. She had to go 2 hours away to an event, give up a day of work to go there. The speaker they had, this person was being paid, mind you, and they did exactly what I'm describing. They stood there and they read a PowerPoint in a monotone. At the first break, about 2 hours into it, she went to the organizer of the event and she told them, I know how to read. Send me the PDF. And she left, livid that she had wasted 2 hours there and 2 hours back, half a day of her time just going to this thing, plus the 2 hours in the sessions, so more than half of her day. It did not make her happy. Another thing about PowerPoint, and I've seen this happen to the veteran Toastmaster, where started the presentation off, everything started off fine till about 60 seconds into it. And when 60 seconds hit, the PowerPoint went south, belly up. The problem was this Toastmaster had married everything they were doing to everything that was up here. And as a result, I watched this person struggle painfully for a half an hour. And most of the content that was planned just didn't get through. Guys, you got to understand something. I've worked in technology and worked around electronics my entire career. Let me tell you one absolute fact when it comes to anything electronic, anything to do with any kind of a slide presentation. It is a junkyard dog. It's not a matter of if I'm going to get bit. It's a matter of when it's going to bite you. And when it bites you, it's going to bite you very, very hard. So when you're doing these things, think of a backup. Have a plan. Know what you're going to do if all things fall apart, because let me tell you guys, it will happen. Want to talk about counting. We all know what counters are. We have counters that count our stuff. We've been counters, right? But I think we kind of take it for granted. We get rid of them for a lot, but then they sneak in, and every now and then it's okay. We all get dinged a little bit around in Toastmasters when we're having our meetings. When you see people do straight up contest stuff, it's gone. The majority of it is gone for most of the people in contests. But here's the thing that surprised me the most early on in Toastmasters. I would see people who would be doing great in contests. Then I would talk to them after, or I would see them in a different role. And they had ahs and ums, and they stammered, and you couldn't get the message out of them. And that kind of made me go, wait a minute. Why is this happening? How bad can it be with these ahs and ums? Let me explain to you a side of the coin you haven't looked at before. I've talked about this other places, but for those of you who haven't seen this portion of it or heard about it, let me explain it to you. It's more than just the disfluencies that are causing you to have these fill words that eat up your whole message and make you not be clear and solid in what you're trying to get across. It's more than that. And the more than that is worse than that. It eats up the most valuable thing that you have, and that's your time. Not only does it eat up your time, it eats up the audience's time. Let me give you an example. When I started researching this, I hit on this, I realized nobody else had ever looked at it from this angle. We look at how to time things in Toastmasters for length. We don't look at how much the disfluencies cost us in time. I looked around, I couldn't find it anywhere. So I went and started looking at things of people doing interviews or speeches. And I found this lady who gave an interview on TV. She was there representing her company. The entire interview lasted 5 minutes. Nowadays, when you have these things on TV, you have to pay for those. It's like a commercial. You get to come on and have your 5 minutes to talk. So this is literally time is money in this instance. So I decided to go and pick this thing apart because she had over 70 of these fill words. I call them killer words because they kill your time. She had over 70 of them. So I decided to edit it. I took out the person speaking to her, leaving just her. She spoke for 3 minutes and 11 seconds. Of that 3 minutes and 11 seconds, she had over 70 of these words in there. I decided to take it a step further. I cut it down to nothing but those words. How bad can it be?
and then and so and then that like somebody that and so 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 that don't.
That was painful, wasn't it? Guys, that was 37 seconds of time. Felt like a lot longer. I'm pretty sure at about 10 seconds through it, you all were going, we get it, Lewis, turn it off. No, seriously, Lewis, we get it, turn it off. But I make you listen to it to show you just how painful that is. And here's the problem with that. 37 seconds eaten up out of 3 minutes and 11 seconds paid on television. Had she been speaking for half an hour, she would have lost over 6 minutes just to fill words alone. So when we talk about the ah counter, typically it's kind of a throwaway job. I mean, once you're in Toastmasters a while and you've been around the same people a while, you kind of go, well, yeah, it's ah counting. This is why it matters. And the problem is when you've got somebody who's a veteran Toastmaster, shouldn't be happening. And they shouldn't be in front of people talking about things and doing things if they can't clean that up. Because this lady clearly went on unprepared. She had not been trained. She had not been prepared for this. And I have seen again, and I use the term veteran Toastmasters, do things completely unprepared. One particular instance, there were 2 Toastmasters, both of them veterans, who were showing something that was important, also something complex. And it was so clear to me, they had not rehearsed this. They didn't know who was going to say what parts about it. On top of that, they weren't prepared for the audience by having an external speaker. So they're trying to play the audio off of a laptop to a room full of people, of which a lot of them are elderly. And it made me think, this is devaluing what Toastmasters is about. Because think of it this way. To those of us who've been around a long time, you kind of feel for them. And we kind of expect more. But think about it from the standpoint of somebody who is brand new to Toastmasters, the neophyte out there. Not the Toastmaster, the Toast amateurs, right? What's happening when they see this? If they see and hear this and they notice this, then they're going to have to question, because I certainly would, if that had happened to me early on. I'd have gone, okay, why am I giving my money and my time to this club, to this organization, particularly the amount of time it takes to be in it and get good at it for a while, if it didn't work for them? Something to think about. Another thing I want to talk about is what I've noticed. It seems like there's a lot of form over content. And I'm not alone. There's a guy who wrote an article on LinkedIn. I found that in my research, and he was talking about this exact same problem, because there's so many little nuances and things that Toastmasters looks at that can deem you for a speech that have nothing to do with what your content is about. And I understand you have to learn some things, but there has to be some sort of a break even in here somewhere. There's got to be a middle ground, because I'm talking about the people who do the over movements where everything has to have a movement. In a contest, I saw a girl one time who everything she did had a movement to it. If she went, then I was sweating so much as I pulled on the rope and I couldn't believe how much my heart was pounding away. Everything was done that way. I nicknamed her Pantomime Girl, because everything she did had something to go along with it. Her message was lost because I was so distracted by what she was doing. This is something we've got to learn to get away from. I know we've got to learn how to do some things, but that whole, I've got to walk from this end of the stage all the way down to this end of the stage to say hi to the audience and make sure I get them. If not, I know on the judge's sheet, because I've been a judge, if they don't cover the area, ding. Watch speakers out of the real world. Guess what? They don't pace like a lion. They don't cover the entire stage. In my TED talk, I stood in that red circle. It's a very proud moment to be in that red circle. And you can bet your ass I wasn't leaving that red circle, not to go anywhere. And guys, I was surrounded by audience straight on, all the way around me, a complete 180. I knew the layout. I knew what was going to be facing me. So what I did is I practiced for that, because you can simply move here and address the audience. And you can step over here and address the audience and not have to go wide. So we need to look at the form on that, because I managed to do that with them. As a matter of fact, in the practicing of my speech and the way I designed it, I specifically put a part in there where I went to this part of the audience and said something. Then I came front and center to this part of the audience. And then I turned to these folks and I said something. I also played to these two areas right here that are kind of off the middle to right in this dead zone in here. As much as I could, I really couldn't see a lot because of the lights, but I knew I could see seas of heads out there, but I really couldn't make out a lot of detail. But that's the way you do it rather than do that. And I've been guilty of this, guys. I've been guilty of doing too much hand movement and gestures. I've been guilty of teaching others. As a matter of fact, a friend of mine a few years ago went through the contest and I helped her, and I was still developing my stuff too. And as a result, I let her get too much into it. She was making the big swooping movements and she was making all the hand gestures and talking about little things, until finally I realized it after the contest. We talked and we analyzed it. And she was doing it for me. And I said, stop. You're moving too much. You're too much. Your message is your message. Your heart is your heart. The passion is there. I don't need all this theatrical movement to go along with it. So it's something to consider. And here's something else. When I worked in news, it was said, basically an unwritten rule, if one person complained about something to us, there were another 100 out there who didn't call to complain. So if I'm talking about these things and being critical of them, and this guy was critical of them, then there's at least 202 of us already who have problems with some of this stuff. Another thing that got me dinked one time was I stepped out from behind the lectern and I stepped off to the side and I propped my arm up on the lectern and I crossed my feet. And I gave my speech. The guy who was my evaluator was a friend of mine, but he's also an educator. And he dinked me for standing too casually against the lectern. He missed the point. My body language has to convey what I'm trying to convey. And if I want to get the audience comfortable, I've got my hand in my pocket right now. It's not a sin. I've got my hand in my pocket because that's a natural thing for me to do. Standing against this lectern the way that I did was a natural thing to do. It was body language. So I dismissed him dinking me as him like going, not really, I don't think, catching on to what I was doing. And he was paying way too much attention to something that he shouldn't have paid attention to. Another great example of that, when I was in the contest for international speech at the district level, given my speech, everybody else had given their speech, and it was taking a while for the judges to come back and give us the list of winners. Next thing I know, if I may be overly dramatic here, somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, Lewis, come with me. I go, okay, what's up? I walk into a room with the judges and some of the Toastmaster higher up people who made me explain why I didn't credit a song that I sang as part of my speech. Now, understand my speech is about a friend of mine who died. And I start off very somber. Then I break into this song of Wasn't That a Party? Could have been the whiskey, might have been the gin, because that's what they played at his funeral. It absolutely broke everybody up at the funeral. You couldn't help but kind of chuckle at this guy's funeral. It should be a really somber event, right? But here's this music playing over the speakers. If I had credited who sang that song like a DJ, ladies and gentlemen, that Wasn't That a Party by the Rovers, it would have yanked the brakes on my speech and completely interrupted my flow. Crediting that song had nothing to do with my speech, but somebody thought it did. And because they were looking at just that portion of it, I almost got disqualified. They were looking to disqualify me because I didn't credit that. That is a clear sign of looking at too much form over content and not paying attention to the heart and the soul that was my speech on Life is Short. So pay attention to that. It's what I would challenge you all to do. We have two paths in Toastmasters. We have speaking and we have leadership. And here's how I look at that, because I've seen some things again with veteran Toastmasters that made me question. You can be a good speaker and not be a leader, but you cannot be a leader and not be a speaker. They go hand in hand, guys. If you're in any form of leadership, and if you look it up right now, communications, speaking well, is one of the top things that bosses look for in employees. And if you look at the other side of that coin, they'll also tell you that's the thing that's missing most, particularly out of college graduates right now. Why? They've been raised on this era right here. But that is what's missing. So you've got to have that. If you're going to be a leader, you have got to have those skills. I had a video somebody sent me way early on in Toastmasters. Said, hey, you need to watch this guy speak. And it was some guy giving a speech somewhere. He was 107, 108, I don't know, something like that. He'd been at Toastmasters a while. And he had like, multiple DTMs and all of this. I made it through 30 seconds because his speech pattern and his delivery and everything was so bad, I couldn't sit through the guy because he had done everything great in the leadership side, but he had neglected the side that is speaking. So here's my question to you guys. And it's something I had to ask myself early on too. Are you as good at speaking as you think you are? Let me ask it another way. Are you good in bed? Are you a good driver? Are you a good judge of character? Do you have fantastic taste in the arts? Most people will answer yes to those, but clearly not everybody can be. It's the same thing in the speaking world. This is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect is when people who are up here in high performance that can do things well, they think of themselves as, I performed low. While on the other side of that coin, people who perform low think they're really high. Forbes magazine had an article that said, you've probably seen it at work. If you've seen somebody whose performance stinks, and not only are they clueless that it stinks, but they think they did great, then you've seen the Dunning-Kruger effect at work. So in this mirror that I'm holding up, look deep at yourself and question, am I as good as I think I am? And if you can't be honest with yourself, because you may not be, ask friends, ask somebody that knows you very, very well. Do some things for them and really get down to the nitty-gritty to find out if you really are. If you are, that's great and that's fantastic. But if you're not, then recognize that you need the work. The problem with this, for me, is when you have people who are in that position, because of the way things are structured, you wind up getting people who are mentors who really shouldn't be, because now they're teaching their bad habits to somebody else who's going to have to turn around now and break those bad habits to get to the good habits. So we've got to start looking at that a little more critically as we do things on the club level. I know on the club level, there's been times that maybe I wasn't as, I don't know if firm is the right word, but if I should have given them more constructive criticism than I've given them, because I don't know that I'm doing them any favors by being just nice to them. And I understand, guys, not everybody is out to do this for a living. Not everybody's out to do this for something more. And maybe that's why I'm a little lighter on some of those folks. But those are the people you also don't want to put in a mentoring capacity, because that's just going to make whoever comes up behind them may want to exceed beyond that, may want to step up into leadership, may want to go into speaking, doing something more with it. And if we put them in between us and where they're going, they're not going to get there as quickly. If you'll notice, I got note cards laying right here in front of me. Note cards are not for me, they're for you. I have things I wanted to bring out tonight. I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything, so I use note cards. I have been dinked for using note cards in a speech before. I rarely do it. I like to pride myself on not using notes. But this speech was so important to me and to you all, I wanted to make sure I did not leave anything out. And about notes, Alan Weiss. Love Alan Weiss. He's been speaking for years. The man is a keynote speaker. He makes $30,000 a keynote, and he uses notes. If Alan Weiss can use notes, so can we, guys. When I talked to my club about this and I asked them, I said, okay, is there anything else that you think I should bring up to just kind of put some food for thought in people's brains to see if they're experiencing some of the things we're experiencing? And it got brought up to me about the DCP points. And the key about the DCP points was this. And I haven't been in that side of things as an officer, that high level to really deal with all of that. So if I'm talking out of my hat a little bit here, you all will let me know. But from what I understand, in order to get your DCP points and what I've read, you have to have 20 people in your club, or you have to have grown by 5 in a calendar year to get your DCP points. I looked it up on the Toastmasters site. There's 150 clubs in District 11 alone. Of those 150 clubs, 20 have more than 20 members, 20 or more than 20 members. That's 13%. Everybody else is below that. Given the way things are, and if you all have struggled like we have put it out to our community saying, guys, we're here, we're good for you, we're good for you. And it's just really hard to keep anybody there. I don't know if this is something that needs to be looked at or restructured, but I know in like Area 41 alone, I believe there's 6 clubs that are in there. So I don't know if that's something that you guys want to say, hey, I've been thinking about that. I'm not the only one having this issue, and it's something we want to talk about, but I wanted to throw that out there to you. When it comes to volunteering, here's something else I noticed about me particularly. It's been a problem for you too. When Scott and I were talking about volunteering, we're quick to volunteer, particularly for contests and things, when we've got skin in the game. When we've got somebody we know who's competing, there's a real high probability we'll jump in and help out, but we don't when we don't have skin in the game. In the contest recently that came up, both at the area level and at the district level, because of the conversation with Scott, I volunteered to be the speaker for the evaluators for both of those contests. But here's the problem, guys. Think back to that first agenda you did. Remember how you did the first agenda? I know what I did. I was scared to death. I was having to ask people to help me do this. And I was sending personal emails. I'm sorry, would you mind being a speaker this week? Could you be the odd counter for me? I'd love it if you'd do that for me. And I felt like I was really I was bothering them. It's what I felt like I was doing. Of course, now I know better. They're going, Lewis, put me in wherever you want me to be. And if only 4 of us show up, guess what? We'll still have a meeting and we'll make it work. But at the time, I didn't know that. But now, as somebody who's been in Toastmasters for a while, you know that's what's going to happen at your club level. But it doesn't always happen above that level unless we've got skin in the game. And here's the trick to that, guys. In talking about what can we do to improve this in any way, how can we improve this? There's a line from Kevin Costner in the movie The Untouchables. He said, if we're going to lead, we must first do so by example. And what do I mean by that? I'm not saying that I'm perfect, because I'm not. Believe me, I've had that pointed out to me in a conversation with Scott, not because Scott called me out, but because Scott made me see myself in a mirror. I realized that I needed to do some things and change some things at work. It's why I'm here in front of you today. I'm not saying that you've got to do everything, but if all did some, then some wouldn't have to do all. In our contest for the district, the day before the contest, an email is going out asking for a judge and asking for a timer, because we didn't have those things. I've been in contests where it's difficult to pull enough people together to pull the contest off. So think about that. And my challenge again to you, and I've challenged myself on it, is if you don't have somebody in the contest, you don't have skin in the game, think of it like your club. What can I do to help? Do a little bit. I know we've all got our lives. I know we got things that get in the way. I understand that. And there's going to be times I'm going to say no because I've got too much going on. But it's also going to be more times now that I'm going to say yes because I've held that mirror up to me. The thing about it is, guys, the status quo has got to go. It's got to change. We can no longer be complacent. We've got this proficiency deficiency, and I know we can fix this. Now, I may be breaking a rule tonight. I don't know. If I'm breaking a rule by being critical of things that happen in Toastmasters. But Simon Sinek said, if no one ever broke the rules, we would never advance. So I guess I'm kind of in good company if I've got Simon Sinek on my side. We can do better. We should do better. Why? Guys, we're Toastmasters. We are Toastmasters. It's right there in the name. The best thing about Toastmasters, beside all the things I said that were good, having the friends and having the camaraderie and being able to still learn and to help teach and grow other people. The best thing is we know how to take constructive criticism. This has been an evaluation, if you want to look at it that way. The good, the better, and the best of Toastmasters. Toastmasters is still needed, guys. I think about it. I get in trouble with my wife, as a matter of fact. For ahs and ums, we'll go to a meeting like somebody in her company, some bigwig in her company is up there and they're talking. And I'm sitting there with a piece of paper and a pencil and I'm tick sheeting. My wife is elbowing me to stop as I'm counting up how many ahs and ums they say. But for every and umming, tongue clicking, PowerPoint reading, lectern gripping, knee shaking, standing there reading everything off the page person that I want to grab a hold of and just sprinkle some Toastmaster fairy dust on them and bippity boppity boo them into somebody, we do have a lot of great people in this club, in this organization, in this area, in this district, in this division, everywhere. But we also have to look at ourselves and see what we can do to be the best. And, since we like to have quotes in these things, I'll end with one for you. If you think you're too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito from the Dalai Lama. Thank you all very much.
Everyone, give it up for Lewis. Please give it up for Lewis Chaney. That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so very much. It's so easy to say all the things that we do well, but sometimes it's also good to challenge us to what can we be better at tomorrow than we're at today. Thank you so very much. We have a couple minutes here. We're about 20 minutes to the next presentation. I would love to take about 10 minutes of questions. Who has questions or conversations that you would like to start or ask based upon what Lewis has talked about? There's a lot of content in there, a lot of stuff to unpack. I would love to hear and start the conversations about what we have to learn forward with. Lewis in chat, some fantastic comments back. Carla just said, loved it. There's been a lot of banter back and forth about a bunch of your points here about being the place to fail forward, about being encouraging to get better. It's here that we need to start encouragement as individuals, even though we might not know how to do something, we can be encouraged to do it. Some very good conversations on this. Who has questions? Who has something that you would like to ask Lewis? Feel free to unmute and ask away.
Yeah, I got to admit, at first I thought after this, I'll be run out on a rail because it's like I'm just throwing some things out there, but I'm really glad to see that their support is there. That is awesome, guys. Thank you very much for that.
Absolutely. So I'll ask the first question because I haven't heard anybody chime in yet. So all this of being able to grow and take the next step forward and not settle tomorrow for what you did today, how's that helped you outside of Toastmasters? Because none of us joined Toastmasters to be a better Toastmaster. We all joined to be better at something else. How has all of this helped you outside in the real world?
What it's done for me is during COVID, creating this business, forced me into being an entrepreneur. And what it did for me is it just helped me push along and amp up to what I call 11acity, which is better than 10acity or is more than 10acity and better than half-acity. And it's one of those things that it just helped me push through and do. When you're in Toastmasters and you have 4 people in there, like I said, and you've got to do a meeting, guess what? You do it. It has improved my skills and my game and made me a better educator.
Fantastic. Thank you. Carla just asked a question and she asked, what was the worst mistake you've made as a Toastmaster?
The worst mistake I have made as a Toastmaster, I will tell you, I think it was in that Golden Mic night. I had all this stuff written down. I had it on cards in my pockets. I got things not quite in order. When I finished that one, people said, you did a good job. I'm like, I walked out just going, no, I didn't. I didn't feel like I did a very good job at all. So that was probably one of the biggest things for me was doing that because I'd only been in about 3 months at the time I was doing it. I was incredibly nervous because I'm looking out there and I've been told, this is the Grand Poobah out here and that's the Grand Poobah over there. And I'm like, shit, why am I here? I'm just scared me to death. So to get in there and to do that and to see what was going on and to have to be in that element against a room full of talent was just nerve wracking. And I think the biggest thing for me there was I let that get to me and I just didn't have a good performance.
Fantastic. A couple of very good questions out there. So another question has come up, actually conversation points more has come up. What's your stance on folks that may not be comfortable with standing or able to stand for one reason or another? Do you think that there's a place in Toastmasters that we need to develop more consistency or more comfort with hearing speakers that aren't your traditional stand and walk Toastmasters?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think about people that I have seen over the course of years working in news who I went to interview a young guy one time who was in a wheelchair. He'd been in some form of an accident and he was going around being a motivational speaker. And the first thing I did was I took a chair and I sat it down. I made my reporter sit down at his eye level, and I put the camera over her shoulder. And he thanked me for coming down to his level, because think about it. He's so used to this, having to look up. And I watched Jeannie Robertson. You guys, anybody here, by show of hands, anybody here seen Jeannie Robertson, ever watch her speak? You guys are familiar with her. She went through a phase where she, I guess, had something wrong with her. She's in her 70s. And she was doing her speech in a rocking chair on stage. And you know what? It was awesome. It's not about all that. And that goes back to what I said. It's not about the form. If you strip all that away, I would love to see somebody who had to be sitting down like that and give something, to see how that would be judged, and let that be something that changes the way we look at content over form instead of form over content.
Fantastic. Melissa from Kentuckiana Women in Leadership has raised her hand. Melissa, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away.
Hi. Okay. Hello.
Hello.
Unmute there. Well, first of all, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story with us. And I found it really interesting. Several points you said. I wanted to say that when I heard about the lady in the rocking chair, it made me think of Lily Tomlin on Laugh-In and that big. When you mentioned talent, a room full of talent, I recently learned that biblically talent actually means money. So I find it interesting because a room full of talent doesn't necessarily mean a room full of money. So maybe to say a room full of skill, that's just something I've been.
I never heard that before. That's very interesting. But I knew there were a lot of people there who were just a hell of a lot better than I was, put it that way. And to be standing in front of them made me nervous. It's kind of the same thing in my world. I'm also a professional magician and mentalist. And I can perform in front of an audience and not be nervous all day long. But you put me in front of my peers, I get more nervous. That's gone away a lot now. But for a long time, it was there. And that was a prime example of it.
Yeah, you were probably being hard on yourself, but that's understandable. My actual question is about when you mentioned in Toastmasters specifically that there's two paths, being leadership or speaking. And I loved how you put it, that it helps to be a good speaker if you want to be a good leader, but you don't necessarily have to be a leader to be a good speaker. I found that interesting. But my question is that I thought there were like 11 different paths on Pathways.
There are a lot of different paths that can take you different places, but correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, please jump in here. The two main paths are speaking and leadership, what Toastmasters is known for. Am I correct on that, Scott?
We used to be, as part of the legacy program between the Competent
That's what I've
Communication
heard.
and the Competent Leadership Manual, there were two concurrent paths that individuals went down. When Toastmasters revamped the education program and turned it into Pathways, they combined those paths. So instead of doing two things separately that weren't necessarily connected, they interwove the two of them together. So of those 11 paths in Pathways, they both contain both speaking and leadership. But you can see within each project, within each level, within each path, that there are specific things that you're asked to do that are more leadership focused and some that are more speaking focused. So yes, we are still technically, everything's interwoven from an educational standpoint, but we do very much still focus on the leadership and the communication, because Toastmasters realizes you need them both in order to change the world.
Yeah, I noticed you put in the chat box, Scott, communication is the currency of leadership. I thought that, I wrote that down too, as something that stood out. So thank you. That was my question. Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Lewis, we are about out of time here. I thank you so very much. That was an absolutely fantastic presentation. Again, everybody, can you please get up for Lewis Chaney for kicking off our spring education conference, our spring conference, in the best way possible.
Thank you guys very much for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks for not taking me outside and beating me with a large stick.
Well, we don't have a stick that would reach from Fort Wayne to where you are, so you're safe.
I'm lucky then.
No, that would not happen anyway. That would not happen anyway. I can't wait till we can do this in person again someday. It'll be so great to be able to be there and feel that energy and that passion that we heard from you today. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You've set this off on the best foot we could possibly set off on. So thank you so very much.
Thank you all.
For everybody that's here, we have about 11 minutes until we get ready to go for our next session.